Okay, ready? Yeah? Okay, good. So let's see what happens. So now the quality of the Q&A depends on the quality of the questions, yeah? So it's really up to you to make sure we get good quality. So let's see what happens. How to be mindfully angry. How to be mindfully angry. Okay, so maybe better to say how to be mindful of your anger might be a better thing to say, because it's not mindfully angry is not kind of the idea. You don't really want to be mindfully angry. One of the little suttas, when the Buddha talks about mindfulness and anger, this is found in the Samyutta Nikaya, and the Buddha says that mindfulness is not enough to overcome anger. Yeah, mindfulness is helpful because mindfulness tells you that there is a problem. You know that you're angry, you have to do something about it. But to overcome anger, you need more than mindfulness. You have to have metta. Metta is what overcomes anger. Yeah, so mindfulness is just the beginning, and then you move on to metta, and then actually the anger disappears as a consequence. But I will talk about this later on, because it's a very important part of the Buddhist path, is how to deal with these mental states, how to get rid of them, and how to then be able to proceed from, first of all, getting rid of the anger, and then move on to metta and kindness afterwards. A very important part. But one of the basic principles is that it's important to catch the anger early. Yeah, the earlier you can catch the anger, the earlier you can see that there is something that is about to happen in your mind, the more ability you will have to overcome it. If once it gets really established in your mind, it's very difficult to get rid of, because it will already have a kind of momentum, and you will justify the anger, the other person are really bad, or whatever, whatever it is that you think, and it's very hard to get out of it once it's established. So one of the principles is to catch it early. Then when you catch it early, you do a countermeasure, which basically is about looking at the person in a different way. And when you look at the person in a different way, the anger subsides. And then you can move on to metta afterwards. It's very, very nice. So don't be mindfully angry, just be mindful and then avoid the anger. That's the right way. Yeah, mindfully angry is no good. Okay, let's go on to the next one. If I don't answer your questions properly, you are more than welcome to try again tomorrow or whatever, and just tell me off for not kind of understanding your question. I will try to be more careful next time around. Okay, how to deal with the sleepy feeling during meditation. Okay, so the sleepy feeling during meditation, the best way, the reason why you feel sleepy is probably because you have been working too hard, doing too many things, thinking too much, all of this. So your mind is tired. Yeah, so usually the best way is to, first of all, just to relax and just let it be. Don't do anything about it. Just allow the sleepy feeling to be there. And then sometimes what happens is that after a while, the energy comes back into the mind almost automatically. If you try to fight the sleepy feeling by forcing yourself to be mindful or forcing yourself to sit straight and all these kind of things, then you are continuing to deplete the energy of the mind, because that force is actually depletes the energy from the mind. So it makes it worse in a sense, and that way you never overcome it. But if you allow it to be, if you just sit there nodding a little bit, don't be too proud to nod. It's okay to nod, so just nod away if you have to. Nobody's going to judge you here. We'd be more than welcome to do a bit of nodding, nodding meditation. And then after a while, hopefully, you will overcome that sleepiness. Actually, I know a very good friend of mine, a monk, was a very good meditator. He tells me that every time he sits down, he nods at the beginning. Because you come out, you have socialized with people, the mind is a little bit tired. And then when he overcomes the tiredness by nodding, then afterwards the brightness in the mind comes back, and then the meditation goes well afterwards. So this is the best way. Don't fight it. Now, the other way of overcoming the tiredness or the sloth and torpor is to have an object that gives rise to joy in the mind. Joy is the opposite quality to sloth and torpor. And this is very often the idea of doing something which makes you feel happy. The idea, one of the things that you always try during the meditation is to have a positive attitude towards the present moment. You think, wow, it's so wonderful to be here. Yeah, so lucky to be part of this retreat. How many people have this opportunity to come here to the Kaduri Center? Who would even have thought that Hong Kong would have such a wonderful place? Yeah, where it's so peaceful and so. It's actually really peaceful here. This is supposed to be Hong Kong, supposed to be one of the most busy cities in the world, and still you can find these wonderful places. What a wonderful thing that is. You can be part of this. You can be here, hear the word of the Buddha, be uplifted by the wonderful company of other people. And all of these things can bring a sense of joy to the mind. When you feel fortunate, you feel a sense of gratitude for having this opportunity. And then you can allow your mind to go to something that you have done in your life which was where you felt very good about yourself. Sometimes, all of us, we have done things where we felt good about ourselves. So you allow the mind to kind of sit on that for a while and get that feeling of joy that arises from goodness that we have done. So giving rise to joy in a systematic way like that is the countermeasure to feeling torpor and sloth. But in the long run, what overcomes sloth and torpor is just living well. If you live well regularly, and you have to be very honest with yourself, it's not enough just to live with the 5 precepts. You have to actually deliberately cultivate continuous kindness in your life. And as I mentioned before, sometimes the most difficult people to be kind with are the people who are closest to us. So work with those. Your husband, your wife, your children, your parents, all your family, the closest family members. It's very strange. On the one hand, we love them. On the other hand, it can be very hard to live in perfect harmony with the people who are close to us. It's a strange thing there. So if you can deal with them, then you can deal with almost anybody. For me, it's my fellow monks. I have to live in harmony with my fellow monks, because they're like the family, the closest to me. So if I can live in harmony with my fellow monks, then I can live in harmony with anyone. It's actually quite easy, because you have more space in monastic life. You have more room, so it's actually easier to live in harmony. You just kind of go back to your kuti, you chill out for a while, and then everything is fine. In family life, it's actually much harder than in monastic life. But the same principle applies. The people that are closest to you are often the most difficult. You start with that. And over time, as you work on this consistently, persistently, with commitment over long periods of time, your mind gradually becomes brighter. And this is one of the things that I always say this, I would recommend you to look at when you come back next year. Are you coming back next year? Yeah, sure? Okay, that's testing, So when you come back, I should probably say if you come back, it's more fair. So if you come back next year, what you do from year to year, and this is the way to know if you are practicing in the right way or not, is to see if your mind is a little bit brighter the next year. Do you have a little bit more mindfulness? Do you have a little bit more stillness and peace in your mind? Do you feel a bit more gentleness inside? All of these qualities, are they going up? Are they growing? And if you see that happening from year to year, you know that you're practicing in the right way. And you know that your daily life actually is working out. But it takes that commitment and perseverance. But it's really, really worthwhile. What else do you want to do with your life? This is it. This is what it's all about. And once you get that, once you start to feel that you're kind of tapping into what life is all about, wow, it becomes very beautiful, very powerful, very meaningful. Suddenly you feel that you have meaning in your life. It's not this endless running around, empty things. It's actually a deep feeling of contentment and meaning inside. And this is extraordinarily useful and extraordinarily, your life actually has this value to it that very few people find. Okay. Next one. Dear Ajahn Brahmāli, it is inspiring that you told us to contemplate on the goodness of ourselves and the present moment first, rather than go to meditation object too quickly. I think it is a very important concept. May you explain it further? Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this later on as well, because we're going to have a look at the anapanasati sutta, which is the sutta on the mindfulness of breathing. And this is perhaps the Buddha's main sutta on meditation. Mindfulness anapanasati is something you see many places in the suttas. And so it's a very important part of meditation practice. When the Buddha teaches the anapanasati, he says that you fulfill the 4 applications of mindfulness. The 4 satipatthanas are fulfilled by doing just anapanasati. That's all you have to do. And all satipatthana is done by that. It's very, very important. And that sutta, it starts off by telling you what to do before you go to anapanasati. And this is perhaps the most important part of the instruction. That is required. And what does it say there? It says that, what does it say again? It says that you go to an empty place. You go to an empty hut, sunyagara, or you go to the root of a tree, rukkamula, which is the foot of a tree or the root of a tree. And so this is the first instruction. So first of all, if you're going to be serious about your meditation practice, you find a place that is conducive to meditation. This is why we come here to the Kaduri Center. This is why many of you have come to Jhana Grove before, because it's nice and conducive to meditation practice. And in daily life as well, try to find a place which is a little bit out of the ordinary, where you can sit down and you can have a suitable little spot for yourself for doing your meditation. Maybe you can go to a group somewhere. I know last year we had the Day of Kindfulness. We're going to have it this year as well, in a very beautiful meditation center in I think 25th story in one of those skyscrapers in downtown on Hong Kong Island. Very, very nice, very conducive. So if you have a group like that to go to, it's a wonderful place to do meditation with people who have have a similar kind of aspiration as you have. So you find a suitable spot. This is the first one. Then you set your body erect, so you have a kind of a suitable posture. Remember, the most important posture, the way you know that the posture is right, is the posture which makes your body disappear. That is the right posture. It doesn't matter if it's cross-legged. Actually, it says in the sutta, it says sit down cross-legged, but you don't really have to be cross-legged. A chair is perfectly fine. What matters is that you feel comfortable and at ease, and your body disappears. That's kind of the ideal. So give yourself time to settle down. Allow this to happen. And then set your body erect, but don't use too much force. Usually the body tends to become erect once the mindfulness comes. It happens almost automatically. You don't have to force that too much either. It just happens. In the beginning, just relax. Sit back and chill. Just take it easy. And then when mindfulness comes, then it is natural for you to sit straight. So remember to be wise about this. What matters is that you are at ease. This is number one. And then the last part of the instruction is to establish mindfulness. And this is really the tricky one. So how do we establish? Before you watch the breath, you have to establish mindfulness. If you are thinking a little bit too much, if you are tired, there's no point in watching the breath because you haven't got mindfulness yet. So first of all, the mindfulness should be established. And mindfulness means that you have a sense of presence in the present moment. You are aware of what's going on around you. You're not just thinking, you're not just all over the place, but you have a degree of clarity and presence in the present moment. So you just sit back, you relax, you wait, you have a positive appreciation of the present moment. You do all of these little tricks I was talking about, especially on the first night. And as you do that, the mindfulness tends to come by itself. Gradually. You can't force these things. Mindfulness is not something you can create out of thin air. You have to allow it to happen because you have put in the causes and conditions for it to happen. So a positive mind state, an appreciation, sense of gratitude, a sense of fellow feeling for the good people around you, and then you allow it to come in this way. And then when the mindfulness arises, then you can start watching the breath. If the mindfulness does not arise, then don't watch the breath. Just relax. And just relaxing, that's already good enough. If you just feel good and you feel happy about whatever, that is also very useful. One of the other tricks of meditation that I would recommend people to do is, if you find it hard to get into the right mood, it can be useful to listen to a guided meditation sometimes. Some of you may find that when you sit in a group like this, it's easier than when you are by yourself. It's almost as if there is a momentum in the group, people kind of supporting each other. If you find that, then go to a group somewhere which can support you in your practice. If you find that there is a certain types of guided meditation that you support you, then have a guided meditation on your iPod or on your whatever it is, and listen to that to help you kind of get in the right mood. It can be more difficult on your own because your mind is already kind of running all over the place because of the day. So get someone to give you that support. That can also be very helpful. So this is some of the things, and then only when your mind has the right qualities, the mindfulness is there, then you go to the meditation object. Okay, so I hope that is helpful. So let's see what happens next. Okay, dear Venerable, are dreams important? Are dreams the messages from our heart or our true self? Dreams or no dreams, how do we prepare ourselves to sleep well at night? Many thanks. Are dreams important? Not really. Yeah, you just enjoy them. Enjoy the dreams, see what happens. Sometimes you don't enjoy them, sometimes you enjoy them, depending on what they're like. Are dreams messages from our heart to or true self? This is really kind of psychology. Yeah, psychology. They kind of interpret your dreams and they tell you something about yourself. This means that. That means this. And I think it was Carl Jung. I think one of the great. He was a Swiss psychologist. He was into kind of dream interpretation, and he could maybe tell you about yourself based on what you dream. Your true self. Does it tell you about your true self? Well, that kind of assumes a lot, doesn't it? That's what I mean, but you have to be very careful. Remember I said before that if you build up a logical system based on the false assumptions, the whole system is wrong. And this is one of those assumptions right there, the assumption of a true self. Yeah. So maybe if you build up the dream theory based on the assumption of a true self, your whole dream theory is flawed because the assumption is wrong. So this is right here. There's a problem. Yeah, true self. This is not really a Buddhist idea. So it may tell you something about your psychological state at that moment, maybe. It may tell you something about a more persistent psychological state. But I can assure you, from Buddhist point of view, it is impossible that it's going to say anything about your true self. Because according to Buddhism, there's no such thing as a true self. So that is the problem with that particular question. So if I were you, I wouldn't worry too much about my dreams. If you're really interested, go to some kind of dream therapist. We're not really into dream therapy in Buddhism. But then comes the last question. The last question is a very important one. How can you prepare yourself to sleep well at night? And what the Buddha says about that is that you should always do the metta meditation is what makes you sleep well at night. And I'm going to do a guided metta meditation later on. Maybe tomorrow, maybe the day after. And then you can, if you like that, you can use that, or you can do your own, or whatever. So do a bit of metta meditation before you go to sleep at night. And then you sleep better. You have no bad dreams, no nightmares. And then when you wake up in the morning, you feel refreshed. You feel energized, ready for the day's work. And that is a wonderful way to spend the night, and you feel at ease and relaxed as a consequence. And usually, if you have a metta, you don't dream at night at all. Yeah, there's no dreams. You just sleep really soundly, and you wake up fresh in the morning. Sometimes you have too many dreams. You kind of feel really exhausted when you wake up in the morning. No dreams is actually much better. And sometimes you can have prophetic dreams. Yeah, if your mind is very clear, you see something in your dream, and it turns out later on that exact thing happens. Yeah, I know people, I can't say any more than that. I know people who had these kind of dreams, and they see something, and a few weeks or a few months later, that kind of event is exactly what happens. I think, wow, amazing. And this is what can happen when the mind is pure. Mind is pure, you can actually have sometimes access. It's called clairvoyance, yeah? Access to the future in this particular sense. It's very strange. I don't know how it works, but that seems to be how things can happen sometimes. But to do that, you need to have a very clear mind with almost no defilements. These things can happen to you. Okay, so I hope that helps. And go on to the next one here. Okay, number 1. Can you explain what is really meant by Vipassana meditation? How can we tell when somebody is teaching Vipassana without Samadhi? If they tell you this is Vipassana without Samadhi, then you know it's Vipassana without Samadhi. Yeah? I'll elaborate a little bit. I was being a bit cheeky. So, the second question. I heard a teacher who taught us to simply observe our 6 sense organs, our mind, while meditating. I find this quite different from the retreat that Ajahn Brahm teaches, and I'm unsure which practice to follow. Can you comment a little on both methods? Okay. So, Vipassana meditation, these are just words. People label these things and they call it Vipassana meditation, they call it Samatha meditation. But the Buddha never really divides things in this way. The Buddha says you do anapanasati. Anapanasati takes you all the way to awakening. It's all you have to do. And anapanasati incorporates both Vipassana and Samatha. If you practice anapanasati in the right way, both aspects are already incorporated in that. If you practice satipatthana, anapanasati is one way of doing satipatthana meditation. If you do satipatthana, it incorporates both vipassana and samatha. So you don't really have to worry too much about this. All you have to worry about is you practice in the way that leads you to progress. And that progress, the best way to measure that progress is to feel that your wholesome states are improving. What are those wholesome states? You feel more mindful. You feel more stillness in your meditation. You feel more kindness in your heart. All of these things. And you have to look over long periods of time, like from 6 months to 6 months, or 1 year to the next one. And you compare. And if you can see that there is an improvement in these qualities, then you know you're practicing in the right way. Yeah? So this is how you know what is the right kind of practice. But all you really have to do is watch the breath. Yeah, you don't have to do anything more than that. And then, of course, you have to also to reduce the defilements of the mind. And that is a kind of usually the idea that is, that is a very important part of the path, the reduction of the defilement. And we're going to talk more about that later on, how to do that. And this is a continuous process throughout your ordinary life, how to reduce those defilements. Especially reducing anger and ill will is so important. So you don't really have to worry too much about this distinction between vipassana and samatha. Usually they're just labels. You go to the Goenka retreat, and Goenka teaches, first of all, you do the, you do the mindfulness of breathing, first of all, then you do the contemplating the feelings of the body, and he calls that vipassana meditation. But it's not necessarily vipassana, because you can become very peaceful as well, and if you become peaceful, it means samatha. Yeah? So it really depends on the outcome of these things. Any good meditation object always leads to both samatha and vipassana. They go hand in hand. They are two sides of the same coin. If you have real vipassana, if you see things clearly, you also feel peaceful. Why? Because seeing things clearly means that you understand that they are dukkha, they are a problem. Yeah, when something is dukkha, they are a problem, you let it go. When you let it go, you feel peaceful. So real insight always comes with samatha. Real samatha always comes with vipassana, because when you are peaceful, you have more clarity, you see things more clearly. So the two things always come together. And they come from the same source, and the source is a reduction in defilements. When you have less defilements, you feel more peaceful, but you also have more clarity of the mind. So both things happen. They come from the same source, which is a reduction in the defilements. So the emphasis should always be to reduce the defilements of the mind. Then you have more samatha and you have more vipassana. All you have to do is watch the breath. Yeah, so this is how it works as far as I'm concerned. Don't worry so much about what people call these things. Worry about whether it works or not, whether it gives rise to the good results. If it gives rise to good results, doesn't matter if you call it vipassana meditation or samatha meditation, worry about whether it works for you. If it doesn't work, then there is a problem. So how can you tell when someone teaching Vipassana without Samadhi? If someone tells you that, this Samadhi stuff, don't worry so much about that, that is when you have to be a bit careful. If somebody says, Khanika Samadhi is good enough, Khanika Samadhi means momentary Samadhi. It's something you find in the sub-commentary, especially the sub-commentary, the Tika to the Visuddhimagga, you find about Khanika Samadhi. Momentary Samadhi, Ajahn Brahm says it's an oxymoron. Oxymoron, it means a contradiction. It's like black-white. Yeah, this white is black. This black is white. Khanika Samadhi is a bit like that. It's momentary Samadhi, because Samadhi by its definition is supposed to be extended. So it is a redefinition of Samadhi that is done in the commentaries. So I don't take that too seriously. Real Samadhi is stretched out over long periods of time. Okay. I heard a teacher who taught us to observe the 6 sense organs while meditating. I find this quite different from the retreat that Ajahn Brahm teaches. I'm unsure which to practice. So practice both. See what works, see what gives rise to good qualities. Yeah? Remember, the purpose is a reduction in defilements. The purpose is to feel more peaceful, to feel good qualities arising. If that happens, then it works. Yeah? And then you can do that. If it doesn't work, if you just do it and it has no good results, everything is measured by the results. Then the results are what matters. If someone tells you, "Oh, just watch this, you will get lots of insight," but it doesn't really make any difference. If you get lots of insight, you should become more peaceful. If you don't become more peaceful, you're not getting insights. Then it's not really working. So think about it, think clearly about these things, and be your own teacher, and then it will take you in the right direction as a consequence. But usually, I must admit, I personally would not normally, I guess it depends on how this is taught, observing the 6 sense organs. But usually what it means to observe the 6 sense organs, usually it means like Indriya Sangvara Sila, the restraint of the senses. That's really what it means. The reason why you observe the senses is to be aware of defilements arising in the mind. Yeah? So you are aware of whether what you are watching now, is this going to give rise to anger? If you watch somebody you don't like, it may give rise to anger. Yeah, you feel negative about somebody. So then you have that Indriya Sangvara Sila, which is the restraint of the senses that allows you to stop the anger from arising. And this is really what the observation of the sense organs should be about, to keep that evenness of mind, equanimity of mind. And this is something we should really do throughout our daily practice. So maybe this is what this teacher means. I'm not sure what they mean. It's not really detailed enough for me to be able to answer her. Okay, so I hope that helps. If you are not happy with that, then please try again tomorrow and see what happens. It is good to see you again, Ajahn. It's very good to see you too. I'm not sure which one you are, but whoever it is, I'm very happy to see you. Meaning of life. Can you elaborate a bit on it? Thank you. Meaning of life. Okay. Meaning of life is... sometimes people think of the meaning of life in the wrong way. They think the meaning of life is like the New Age. The New Age has this meaning of life. This is the age of Aquarius. Everyone loves each other, and then we move towards a more harmonious society, and everything is kind of very nice. But sometimes I wonder whether we really are moving towards a more harmonious or a more disharmonious society. Sometimes you read the newspapers and you wonder what's going on. But this is to me the wrong way of thinking about the meaning of life. Humanity moving towards the omega point, some kind of idea like that. That is not really the right way. It sounds very nice, sounds very fluffy, everyone loves each other. It would be great if it could be like that, but I don't think that is a very realistic way of looking at the world. Rather, the way to look at the meaning of life is to look inside of yourself. What is it? If you look inside of yourself, what is it that you really want? What is it that you desire with your life? And if you look inside of yourself, what you see this force inside of you that we call tanha in Pali, craving, the desire that always drives you on. Why is it that you do so many things in your life? Why is it that where does this force that makes you do things come from? Why are you here? What made you come here? What makes you go to work in the morning? What makes you go to school and learn things? What makes you do all of these things? Get married, enjoy entertainment, eat certain kinds of food. And if you look, the source of all these things that drives you on, not only in this life, but one life to the next one, is tanha. It is this desire inside of you. And if you look at that desire, it will always tell you to some extent you will be satisfied when you get these things. Yeah, when I get into the perfect relationship, oh, I will be so happy. Yeah, it will be the perfect person. I will be happy forever after. And then we get into the relationship, and it's very nice for a while. And it's not so nice anymore. It kind of, after a while, it becomes like more habitual. And sometimes you can get into very good relationships. It's possible to have fairly good relationships, but they never have that supreme satisfaction whereby you feel completely content and satisfied. The external world, whether it's relationships, whether it is food or entertainment or whatever it is, can never give you that complete satisfaction. Why? Because craving is a psychological problem. It is something missing inside of you. You cannot fill up the internal psychology by external things. If there is an internal problem, you have to deal with it inside of you. This is kind of the Buddha's insight. We try to deal with an internal problem through external means, and it's never going to work. Yeah, so we get a relationship, it doesn't work, get another one, it still doesn't work, get a third one, still doesn't work. And we keep on going like that for life after life after life. And after a while, hopefully, we kind of get, wait a minute, maybe there's another way to do this. Yeah, you hear the word of the Buddha, and then you come here to the Kaduri Center. Is that right? Something like that, yeah? And so you start looking in a different place. You understand the problem is an internal one. It's a psychological problem. So you start to look inside of yourself instead. And you start to understand, if you look carefully, that the way to fill this desire inside of you, this desire is a sense of lack. Something is missing. That's why we desire things, because something is missing inside of you. You feel incomplete. You feel not fully satisfied. You don't feel fulfilled. So how do you do that? Well, the way you do that is, first of all, by living well. Living with kindness. When you start to live with kindness, what happens is that that feeling, that sense of satisfaction that you have when you are kind to others is a different kind of happiness than the happiness you have from sensuality. If you are truly kind to somebody, I'm sure that you will know what I'm talking about already. If you are truly generous and giving towards somebody, that sense of happiness you have is a sense which stills the craving. The craving disappears. It's a happiness in the present moment. It's not always in the future. Craving is always about the future. This is a happiness that happens in the present moment. Notice that difference. Any kind of spiritual happiness is a happiness that happens in the here and now. And that is very different from the happiness of external phenomena, which most of the time is in the future. And you start to understand that if I'm going to fill this psychological hole in myself, I have to develop that kind of happiness. You develop it by being kind, first of all. Then you develop it by developing a mind of kindness. By being generous, by reducing your defilements. And ultimately, you do it through meditation practice. And one day, you get into a state of samadhi for the first time. You start to feel powerful joy and happiness inside of yourself. And you start to understand that craving is almost no longer there. The deeper the samadhi is, the less craving and the more happiness and the more content you feel. And one day, you feel absolute contentment. Craving is completely gone, yeah? And you realize that now you have reached that thing that you were looking for all along. This is what you always wanted. Yeah, you have found the source, the thing that craving was always promising you. Craving was saying, if you get into a relationship, if you get the right job, if you get the right house or whatever, then you will be satisfied. But it doesn't work like that. It happens instead when you sit on your bottom, watching your breath. That's when it happens. It's kind of weird, isn't it? We have been looking in the wrong place all along, and suddenly one day you do something which is completely opposite, and that is where you find that thing that you were looking for all along. And that's why I'm saying it is the answer to the meaning of life, because suddenly you discover what you always wanted. Happens in meditation practice. When you are completely content, it means there is nothing to drive you anywhere. There's nothing more to be done because you are absolutely happy in the present moment. There's nothing more to do. Because there's nothing more to do, there's no desire. You could sit like this for the rest of eternity, and there's nothing to do. That's what I mean by finding the answer to the meaning of life. When there's nothing to do, it means you have found the solution to the thing you were looking for all along. And this is why states of samadhi, that's why they last for so long. You sit absolutely still like a rock for hour after hour after hour. Nothing is moving, and you are perfectly happy and content with that. Nothing more to do. It is the answer to the meaning of life. Then, unfortunately, the state of samadhi stops, and then you also need the insight on top of that to kind of finish it off once and for all. This is how you find the answer to the meaning of life. It's extraordinarily powerful and extraordinary. Once you get this, once you understand what it is all about, then everything else becomes kind of irrelevant by comparison. Okay, I hope that works. I hope that helps you a little bit. And I would be very disappointed if you don't become a monk or nun at the end of this retreat, because now you know the meaning of life. Yeah, this is what it's all about. So, anyway, I'm just messing around a little bit. Don't take it too seriously. So, dear Ajahn Brahmāli, thanks for your inspiring teaching. It is so true that when we are able to be kind to our family members, we are able to be kind to the world. Is it due to the difference in expectation? And how can we resolve it? Thanks a million. It is part of the difference is in expectation. Yeah, you realize that your family members, they are the way they are, and you're not going to be able to change them probably. Sometimes we want to change our family members. My wife should be like this, my husband should be like this. Don't do that again. You've done it a million times before. You know that is the wrong way of doing things. Don't think like that. When your family members or people have a habit, you can expect them to continue with that habit in the future. Just accept it. That is really the right way. And the right way to think about this is to think about yourself. When you have a bad habit, how easy is it to change your bad habits or your habits? It's quite hard, yeah. We get into a rut, and because you get into a rut, when somebody says the wrong thing, they have said it so many times before, they say it again, you can't stop yourself from reacting in a certain way. And it's actually really blooming hard to stop yourself from reacting in that way. So once you understand that it's hard for you to change, you don't expect other people to change, because you know it's difficult. So acceptance is a very important point. That's what you mean here by difference in expectation. Yeah, you don't expect your family members to be in a certain way. You accept them for what they are, because you know probably they have to be like that. It's difficult with family members. It's more easy to do that with strangers, because strangers, who cares? You know, they come and go. Family members is more difficult because we have to live with them all the time. But this is really the kind of where you want to get to accept them. This is the way they have to be here. And then that is actually the best way to do that. So this is how you resolve it. Yeah? And then what happens when you start to accept people for what they are, you also have more compassion on the people in your family, because you know that they are trapped in those habits, and because they are trapped in those habits, it's actually more of a problem for them than it is for you, especially if there are bad habits. Yeah, it is a problem for them. And then you can have a sense of compassion. And once you have compassion, you become far better at finding solutions to the problem. If you get angry with your family members and upset, you will never find a solution, because they will just react back to the anger, they will get defensive, and there is no solution to be found in anger. The solution is to be found in compassion. If you have compassion with somebody, if they feel that you understand them, then they will be more open to changing their ways, rather than actually you reacting in the wrong way. And this is the way to often resolve difficult situations. But don't expect them to change, even if you have compassion, because then you will be disappointed again. But that is the best way to do it. I'll talk more about this later on. So, good. Thanks a million. Okay, that's a lot of thanks, but that's good anyway. Anyway, so that's okay. That's enough for that one. So again, if you want to come back on these questions, please do so. And we can bring up these issues a number of times if you wish. Okay. Which one of the 4 suttas that you mentioned, the middle length, long discourse, connected numerical, would you recommend to start with? Is there a recommended order in which they should be read, or sequence in which they should be read? Not really. Sometimes you can find an anthology of suttas where they have picked out suttas from different collections, and there is an anthology called In the Buddha's Words, which is very nice, translated by an American monk called Bhikkhu Bodhi, who has done a lot of translations that are available. He is a very good translator, but sometimes his language is a bit complicated, perhaps. There is a new translation now available online. If you go to suttacentral.net, you go there and you find the translations by Ajahn Sujato or Bhante Sujato. He is my very close friend. He has just been staying for the Rains retreat at Bodhinyana Monastery in Perth, and I know him very well, and he's just left for Sri Lanka recently, and he's doing some other thing in Sri Lanka. And he has translated all the suttas. He spent 2 years on a small island just off Taiwan. He was given this little kuti, this little hut, by some of his supporters, and he stayed there inside this kuti, just translating every day for 2 years. And in that period, he translated 4 Nikayas. It's quite amazing. You can translate 4 Nikayas in 2 years. It's almost unheard of. I thought maybe he's the first one in history to do it so fast. But he's leaning on many other people who have done it before him. And he has translated the suttas in a bit simpler language than Bhikkhu Bodhi. Bhikkhu Bodhi is a philosopher, and when you are a philosopher, you don't understand that other people might need a simpler language. You teach this very highfalutin language. Nobody else can understand what you're talking about. So Ajahn Sudato decided, okay, I'm going to teach it for people who... One of the things about the suttas in English is that a lot of people read them who have English as a second language. Yeah, and many of you would know that already. That is your second language. So because of that, we should use a simple language that everyone can understand fairly easily. You make the language too complicated, and people who have English as a second language, it makes it very hard for them. And use a kind of standard international English which everybody understands, not some kind of, some kind of fancy English language. This is what he has tried to do. I'm sure it is still a bit complicated, because I know what Ajahn Sudato is like. He's kind of this fairly intellectual kind of person. Yeah, he doesn't know what ordinary people, how they talk. He kind of lives in his own little ivory tower and kind of does things in his own way. But at least he has tried, and that he deserves credit for trying at the very least. It's not going to be perfect. So check it out. Go to suttacentral.net, and there you will find the Majjhima Nikaya, the Digha Nikaya, and start with the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length discourse. That's what I would recommend. They are reasonably long. They are fairly full. They have a bit of history. You get a bit of feeling for the Buddha in there. There's a great variety in them, and some of them are very inspiring. Some of them are very nice. One of the suttas you can start with is called the Chula Hattipadopama Sutta, the shorter sutta of the simile of the elephant's footprint. 27th sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya. This was the sutta of the Venerable Mahinda. Mahinda was the son of Emperor Ashoka in India 2,300 years ago. And he went to Sri Lanka and to teach, to kind of get Buddhism to Sri Lanka. This is what he taught to the king and to the royal family in Sri Lanka, to convert the Sri Lankans to Buddhism. And they were so impressed by the sutta that they all became Buddhists afterwards. Yeah, so it's a good place to start, right? Majjhima Nikaya, middle-length saying number 27, the shorter sutta on the simile of the elephant's footprint, the Chula Hattipadopama Sutta. It's a very nice one to start with. And I often teach that sutta on these kind of retreats. Not this year, but I've taught it here before. The other way to read the suttas, remember when you read them, don't just read them like some kind of robot. Start with number 1, then do number 2, then do number 3. Yeah? Start with number 1, think, this, I don't understand anything, yeah? Skip it. Go to number 2, this is really boring, skip it. Number 3, this is kind of ancient stuff, don't like it, skip it. Yeah, this is the right way of doing it. And then when you get one which speaks to you, that is the one you read. And if none of the suttas speak to you, don't read them at all. Yeah, it has to be enjoyable. It has to be something that you like. That is the right way of doing this. And if you find it hard to understand the suttas, there are a lot of good explanations now of suttas online. If you go to the BSWA, BSWA Buddhist Society of Western Australia, that's where we hang out, down in Perth. If you go to that website, we have a lot of sutta explanations on that website. You can listen to us, what we have to say about the suttas. That can often be very useful to listen to those suttas, because when you listen to somebody explain it, it's far easier to understand sometimes than if you have to understand it by yourself. Yeah, this is why I do this kind of retreats, to kind of get you interested in the suttas. If you end up after this retreat, you think, oh, so boring, then I have failed in my mission. My mission is to inspire you to enjoy the suttas. That's my mission is to teach you the word of the Buddha, to make you enjoy the word of the Buddha. That is what I see as my mission in being here. So there you are. That's a few recommendations. And if none of that works, then if you come back next year, please complain, and then we will see what other information we can give to you, and see if we can inspire you in a different way here. Okay. Meditation at times takes place in the dark of one's self, and it's a process of enlightening. Then why is it so? For example, in this retreat for meditation, the external environment is always dark. Can one meditate with light and openness instead of always no light, curtains drawn, etc.? If not, please enlighten the wise. Okay, thank you. You can have the light on if you wish. It is not impossible. You know, for example, sometimes we do walking meditation in the day, and of course then the lights are on. So you can do that. But the purpose of meditation practice is not the light outside. The purpose of meditation is the inner light. And when your mind gets bright, you don't need the external light to feel bright, because you feel bright inside of you. And the idea is to turn off the external senses, to turn off the light of sight, to turn off the hearing. Go inside and find the brightness inside. To do that, you have to actually stop the stimulation on the outside. But if you feel that your mind is not bright enough yet to do that, then what you have to do is you have to practice this path in a way that works for you, and eventually the day will come when you start to brighten up inside. So maybe the best thing for you to do is to do some metta meditation to brighten up your mind, to do walking meditation, to do things, whatever works for you, to contemplate the suttas a little bit, to do all the basic practices on the path. Make sure you live with kindness in your life, make sure you try to be compassionate and all these kind of things. And as you do that, that inner light will gradually turn on inside of you. And then you will understand why we turn off the external lights, because they are a nuisance. It's a hassle to have lights on outside. Darkness is actually very positive for meditation practice. You will start to understand why that is the case. But everything at the right time and right place. So if you're not ready for it yet, do what works for you. Don't just follow like a slave what everyone else does. Make sure you do what works for you in your life. And then gradually you too will be enlightened. I prefer awakening to enlightenment. I think awakening is a better word, because we awaken to the truth, to the reality of what the world is like. That is really, enlightenment is also okay, but I think to me awakening is even better here. Okay. Counterfeit have the potential to help us discern what's original and what is not. Okay. We need both knowledge and silence to know. There must be a difference in what is considered original, real, and false. Is there? What's beyond origin? Can you elaborate on what's direct knowledge? Okay. So, yes, if something is a counterfeit of the true Dhamma, there must be a true Dhamma. There must, of course, be the true for there to be something which is false. Yeah, it's just like gold. Either the gold is false or it's real gold. And if it's false, you don't really want it. Yeah, so there is always a distinction between falsehood and truth. So this is a very important thing. And how to distinguish this, and this is what I was trying to get at this morning, the way to distinguish this is to study the history of Buddhism and to learn about how the history has developed, to go back to the common source, which is the source for all Buddhists. Yeah, this is what it's all about. And that source, to make it very simple, is really these 4 Nikayas I was talking about before. Long discourses, middle-length discourses, connected discourses, and the numerical discourses. You also find them in the Agamas, you find them across the board. Why is it that these are original? Maybe I should explain. It's kind of too easy for me to say this is original. How do we know that? And the way that we know this, if you go to the Chinese Buddhist canon, it's very, very large. And you compare the Chinese Buddhist canon to the Pali Buddhist canon, those things that are in common between those 2 canons, that is what is most original. And if you look at the various schools of Buddhism, Sarvastivadin is one of the schools, Dharma Guptakas is one school, Mahasangikas is another school, Theravadin is another school. They often say there were 18 early schools of Buddhism. And if you look at what all of those schools have in common, again, it is the 4 Nikayas that they have in common. If you go to Abhidhamma, for example, Abhidhamma, there's already big differences between the schools, and that is why I say Abhidhamma is not original, because of the variations. Abhidhamma arose after the schools separated. That's why it is different in the different schools. So this is how we know these things. And remember, these schools, they started to separate around the time of Ashoka, about 2,300 years ago. They have existed apart since that time. The Sarvastivadin scriptures were then translated into the Chinese language. This is Middle Chinese. The Chinese characters that were used about 1,600 years ago, 1,500 years ago. I don't know, I can't read Chinese, but those people who can read Chinese, probably many of you can probably read Chinese, I would assume, find it hard to read ancient Chinese because it's different, Yes, it's different from kind of modern Chinese. You have almost to be a specialist to be able to read ancient Chinese. And there are specialist people who can do these things. But these sutras have been staying separate for 2,300 years. Some of them went to the north of India, to Kashmir and Gandhara, which is the northern part of India. The other ones, they went with Venerable Mahinda to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka to Kashmir is a long distance. If you have, I don't know if you've traveled in India. India is a big country, not quite as big as China, but it's a big country. It's about 3,000 kilometers from Sri Lanka to Kashmir. That was a very long distance in ancient India, when you can only walk or you can go by ox cart. Ox carts go very slowly. It's a long distance. They were very separate. So for that reason, they have been kind of kept separate for that a very long period of time. And what is so amazing is that after all that time, still you find that these sutras are very, very similar after 2,300 years. And that is how we can be fairly certain that this is very close to the original word of the Buddha, because they have been kept so intact for such a long period of time. This is one way that we know these things. These are original teachings. So when you read these sutras, you are there in the presence of the Buddha. This is the Buddha talking to you. Isn't that kind of marvelous? The Buddha is talking to you right there. I always like to remind people that when the Buddha taught, he knew that the Dhamma was going to last for a long time into the future. He was aware this was going to carry on from one generation to the next one down the line. And because he knew that, he taught in a way that was very universal, that was applicable across history, across cultures. It doesn't matter what culture you come from. When you read the sutras, it kind of applies to you. Why is that? Because being a human being, the culture doesn't matter so much. We are basically the same. We don't want to be the same, we want to be special. Basically, we are the same. How does that make you feel? You are the same. Does that make you feel bad, or does it make you feel all right? People don't really want to be the same. We are special. We are superior. We are better. Or at least we are eccentric. Yeah, we are different at the very least. But no, you are the same. I am the same too. We all have the same problem, same defilement, same desires, same cravings. Yes, there is a little bit of superficial difference. Okay, in China you eat Chinese food. In France you eat French food. In Sri Lanka you eat Sri Lankan food. But it's tiny, tiny difference. Yeah. I like what Ajahn Brahm says. He says that if you really want to travel around the world, you want to see the Great Wall of China. He said, what's the big deal about the Great Wall of China? If you live in Bodhinyana Monastery, go and have a look at the Bodhinyana Monastery wall instead. Yeah, then it'll make you feel happy. You don't have to go all the way to China to see the Great Wall of China. Okay, the Bodhinyana Monastery wall is very humble compared to the Great Wall of China. But the point is, that the difference isn't that great. Okay, the Great Wall of China is a bit more fancy, but so what? Yeah, these things are not so important. They are kind of minor little details. The core of what it means to be human is the same, regardless of culture. And in a way, that's great. It means that we don't have to enlarge our ego so much. We don't have to be so proud of my culture is so wonderful and so great, much better than these other barbarians over there. Yeah, these barbarians that they haven't got a clue. We can let go of all of that, and we can see the common in humanity. And when we see the common in humanity, we can be friends across culture, across gender, across ages, across educational standard, across cultural standard. What a wonderful thing it is to have a world where we are more friends and we live in more harmony instead of always fighting with each other. What a terrible thing that is. And then we are kind of living in the right way. Anyway, I'm getting this little bit sidetracked from the question here. So this is what is original. And this is how we know what is original. So come back to that and forget about everything else. As you do that, and as you use that, use your common sense. Use what works for you. You ask what is direct knowledge. And direct knowledge begins in very humble ways with just knowing that kindness works. Yeah, when you are kind, you feel good about yourself. Just investigate that a little bit. When you are kind to somebody, what does it feel like? And if you are truly kind, if you're truly coming from a good heart, you actually feel good about yourself when you do that. If you are unkind towards somebody, then what does that feel like? It actually feels bad. So investigate that. That is part of direct knowledge. It's the preliminary stages of direct knowledge. This is how you can come to understand a little bit about how you function as a human being. But the higher stages of direct knowledge are, first of all, the states of samadhi, like the jhanas, that sort of thing. And ultimately is the direct insight into reality. When you see things like impermanence, anicca, dukkha, anatta, this is the real direct knowledge. And that is where you have a kind of life-transforming events, and your entire psychology turns upside down. You see things in a completely new way, and it leads to very profound sense of contentment and happiness as a consequence. Okay, last question for tonight. Number one, Bhante, one's practice declines also because of factors from within. The point is that the internal factors inside of us, we have some control over. Yeah, your inner life is something we can do something about. External things is not something you can do anything about. You know, whether the government changes or there is a war or whatever, you can't do very much about that. Yes, you can be kind, you can help a little bit, but only a tiny little bit. So external forces, normally we have to accept for what they are. Our inner life, that is where we can actually make a difference. We can choose to be kind, or we can choose to be unkind. We can choose to be compassionate or uncompassionate. That is where we can do the work. So yes, it can come from within, but we try to avoid that. We try to make instead of having decline, we try to have improvements from within. And that is how we actually make the path work. Number two, Bhante, you see ghosts and beings in other realms. Do I see ghosts in other realms? Unsure. I can't say anything about that. Do they exist in the form of human beings? Or human beings, any characteristics, have the human beings any characteristics of other realms, as you simile this morning? Well, sometimes the beings in other realms, they can look quite a lot like human beings. Yeah, there may not be that much difference. Sometimes there is a bit, sometimes there can be also quite a lot of difference. They can manifest in all kinds of different ways. So it just depends on the kind of karma you have. It depends on the kind of mind state you have and what you want to be. If you want to be reborn as a cat in your next life, somebody was saying, I was staying with somebody before, and they were saying, oh, these cats, look, they're so happy. All they do is just eat and sleep all day. Yeah. If you think like that too much, you might get reborn as a cat. So be careful how you think, because the life of a cat may not be as good as you think it is. Maybe it's when it comes from inside, when you actually look outside, from a cat's point of view, it may not be as good. So it all depends on your development. But to some extent, the devas will often, I would say that they have similar form to humans, at least to some extent. But they may also not have that. The higher you go up into this realm, the more formless they become, until they not have any form at all. You get into the formless realms, or you get into the even the rupa loka, which is where they don't really have much forms at all. So there can be similarities, but it doesn't have to be. There's all kind of potential there. But what matters is not so much the form. What matters is how you feel about it. As long as you feel happy with it, as long as you are well, that is what is important. So, okay, enough for tonight. And we will continue tomorrow. And if you have more questions, please, again, don't be afraid of asking. You can ask anything you like. But that is enough for now. And so just continue with whatever you want to do. Have a nice night's sleep. Do a bit of metta meditation before you go to rest. Sleep well. And then tomorrow morning, come out whatever time you like. I will be here again at 6 a.m. to do some meditation with you if you want to come out. Otherwise, we'll see you later in the day. Let's do the Arahang Samma together here. So now you have it up there. Yeah, this is what we're going to do now. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Buddhang Bhagavantang Abhivademi Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami